Okay, good. I'm Dana Beach, the director of the Coastal Conservation League. We're based in Charleston with offices in Beaufort and Georgetown and Columbia. The ACE Basin is the flagship conservation initiative launched 25 years ago. It was just celebrated its 25th anniversary, and it is significant for many reasons, but one of them, and maybe the most important, is that it's one of the premier landscape-level conservation projects in the country. It's the first project, really in South Carolina anyway, that, and really in the Southeast, that envisioned looking at an entire landscape, in this case 3 watersheds, the rivers being the Ashepoo, the Combahee, and the Edisto, to try to preserve intact the watersheds, their wildlife habitat, the wetland systems associated with the rivers, and therefore the rivers themselves. The work has been done at one piece at a time, literally, over the past quarter of a century. And today, more than 200,000 acres of land are protected. They're protected in various ways, through easements held by Ducks Unlimited, the Nature Conservancy, the Low Country Open Land Trust. They're protected in public ownership by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Department of Natural Resources in South Carolina. And there really is almost nothing else quite like it around, certainly in the East, at that scale. Property that was so close to metropolitan areas that were growing so rapidly in the 80s. I think one of the most important things that the ACE does is it illustrates that we do not have to assume that it's inevitable that, quote, progress will erase these historic and ecological landscapes. That it really just takes effort on the part of landowners, on the part of citizens, and advocacy and conservation land trusts to make sure that that we don't lose these places. They're not only important for recreation and wildlife, which we know, but they're also important for our economy. They make a place more attractive for major corporations to locate. I understand that the Development Alliance in Charleston actually uses some of the maps we put together showing the protected lands when they go recruit new industry. And that's obvious why that would matter. I mean, it matters to all of us who live here, and of course, why wouldn't it matter to a corporation looking to have a great place for its workforce to live? Further, in some cases with, say, Colleton County and Hampton County, the best and highest and most practical use of land is agriculture, forestry, and wildlife management. And so this creates a framework, an economic framework, that allows that to be to play out in the most beneficial way possible. The great thing also about the ACE is that it's established a model that later spread throughout the rest of South Carolina and is being replicated up and down the East Coast. The concept now is being deployed on the Savannah River, south of the ACE Basin, on the Cooper River, north, on the PD and Waccamaw, the Black River just north of Georgetown. And also there are parts of coastal Virginia that are looking at this same strategy. It's a very creative strategy. It's opportunistic, it's place-based, it takes into account the fact that not every place and culture and ecology is the same, but the basic concept really is the thing that holds it together, and that is, how do we look holistically at a region and determine the best options for preserving what ought not be developed. One of the other things I'd say that's important about it is that it's a growth management tool. It begins to define the edges of the metropolitan regions. In our case, in this case, Beaufort and Charleston, it defines the limits of growth, and that's something we really need to be more thoughtful of. We need to grow more efficiently. We need to grow in ways that are more functional. You know, just sprawling out across the landscape is not good for anybody. It's not good for wildlife, and it's not good for the economy. So the ACE is just it's one of the great success stories, but it's not over. There's a lot left to be done. There are more properties in the ACE that need to be protected. there also are other threats now, and in some ways most dauntingly, there's the threat of sea level rise and global warming induced changes. But in fact, the ACE actually is a mitigating strategy for climate change, because one of the best ways to sequester carbon is in forest and wetlands. So it has so many benefits that we need to appreciate and duplicate and replicate across the landscape.
Thank you.